welcome to our video. This is Nancy Laney, President of Peak Compliance. I am here today to tell you about our experience when we went to the CIC 2023 conference hosted by FutureFeed. It was the CMMC Implementation Conference, and it was absolutely magical. We went there not knowing exactly what to expect, and we made some amazing friends. We met some really awesome people and had a really good time. While we were there, I was doing a podcast interview with Ben Chaubenet, one of the founding members of the Cyber AB. And Reagan walked by and Ben introduced him and we started visiting. And pretty soon we realized almost all of the founding members of the Cyber AB were there at that conference. And somebody made the suggestion of, wouldn't it be neat if we had a reunion conversation? And as we were talking about it, they realized they had never been together because at the time of doing the Cyber AB work, it was COVID and they did everything remotely on YouTube or on Zoom meetings. And so I said, you know, we could help put that together. And so with that, I want to introduce you to the founding members of the Cyber AB and hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. Thank you and have a great day. All right, welcome. We are here in San Diego today. We are at the CIC 2023 conference, and I have the founding members of CMMC with me. So let's start and do introductions.
Hi, Katie Arrington. I'm the mommy of the CMMC.
All right, Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben Chaubenet, President of Phoenix CS, and I was the training committee chair.
Awesome.
I'm Jim Gopal. I was the treasurer and one of the founding board members.
Yep. And I'm Mark Berman. I'm the CEO of FutureFeed now, and I was kind of a jack of all trades back in AB days.
My name is Reagan Edens. I am the Chief Transformation Officer for DTC Global, and with these esteemed colleagues, founding member of the AB, I was chair of the Standards Management Committee.
Oh, nice to meet you. So I'm Nancy Laney with Peak Compliance. So we're all gathered here today. Why don't you guys tell me a little bit about the early days of CMMC?
Oh, a long, long time ago in a place far, far away. There was lots of alcohol. So, you know, it started, my job in the Department of Defense as a CISO was to create something to get compliance on the DFAR rule at that time, which was 7012, which is the NIST 800-171. And all the experience that I had working in industry, working as a legislator, working for the federal government, I knew the federal government should not solve this problem, that it would be industry that needed to solve the problem. And put out this crazy rally call. Gosh, I think it was the end of 2019.
November.
Well, it's like October, wasn't it?
Yep.
We call it the
It's
it's
mic
famously
drop.
called the mic drop moment.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
that?
Because I dropped the mic and walked out of the
Yeah,
room.
that's right.
Dropped the mic.
Literally.
I heard
walked out
about
the-
this, and
Walked
people were
out
like,
the room.
"You won't believe what just happened."
Yes.
I mean, it
Mic
was
drop moment.
totally lit up. Yeah.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
these people around me are far better than I, because these people, when the government said we need this body to stand up and we need this nonprofit to come together to create a training and certification capability, they volunteered. And it still astounds me to this day that they signed up, they all had day jobs, and they gave more, I think, to us in national security during that time than they gave to their work or their families. So my hat is off to all of you, because you did it for all the right reasons. And it's very rare in our society today that you see people willing to say, I'm willing to dedicate 40, 50 hours of my life on a continual basis, no end in sight, to solve a problem that it's confounded nations on how to get this done. And my hat is off to every one of you. You are my heroes, as I said from day one. But they all came together, an amazing group, a lot of opinions.
Yeah, that's for sure. We're never short of opinions.
So Reagan and Mark, tell us a little bit about your members.
So, you know, my defining moment when I thought that this is not going to be anything I've ever done before. So our very first meeting was the day that they locked the country down for COVID, right? And so we're in this meeting and everything's everybody introduced themselves because some people knew each other, some people didn't. And one of the board members says, "Look, I have to step out because I've lost my son in a tragic accident, and they're reading him his last rites,
My.
and I'll be back.
Oh my
I'll be
goodness.
back." And I had no idea, and I didn't, there was this audible gasp, right? And and I was like, "Oh my God!" So I'm sitting there thinking about this, and then there's this dead silence, and then the mission moves on, right? And then later on, like an hour and a half later or so, rejoins the meeting, and I thought, this is something at a completely different level, that you got people who are so dedicated to the mission and so dedicated to the purpose that we're literally in a pandemic, you know, giving this 110%, and that
Amazing.
it was stunning. But I thought, I'm with the right people. If we're gonna do this, this is the group to do that.
The dedication
Yeah.
is unreal.
That's right.
How about you, Mark?
I think my strongest memory of the early days was that same meeting that Katie left after the mic drop, and we all stood around for probably 15 minutes looking at each other and decided that we would come back in 2 weeks and meet. And there wasn't a lot of communication because we were all sort of stunned. But when we came back together, for me, there's nothing more exciting than a blank piece of paper. And what I realized that we had in front of us was a giant canvas that we could paint not a solution, but the best solution for our country. And frankly, the industry is ill-defined, but like the entire industry that serves our country. And that was extremely exciting to me. And I got a chance to stand in front of a microphone and say a few words. And I said, to me, this is like the founding fathers that had a problem and they came together in Philadelphia and they needed to build a country that was going to be fair and equitable. And it was a little bit nerve-wracking for me to get in front of a crowd and talk about Independence Hall and their founding fathers. But that's really what it meant to me, is we needed to protect what they built, but we also had kind of the same problem. There was going to be something complicated and controversial with this group. Very controversial, but that shouldn't stop us.
Not at all.
You face adversarial conditions and you do it head on, not indirectly. And I thought this was that moment, and I felt lucky that I had a microphone in my hand at a moment that seemed as important as that. And then just told myself, let's do our best and give it a shot.
Amazing. Yep. Thank you. Ian.
Well, you know, as I go back, I always think back to this crazy time, and people are like, how did you get on that board? How do you get on that board? It was like 12 people that, had all of this responsibility. In my case, I was not at the mic drop moment. That was my bad luck. I wish I was. But it's such a historical moment, I think. But later on, as the original members, that is, I think, who were the people who were at the mic drop moment that started?
It was Mark, me, Ty,
Ty, Mark, you, Jim,
yeah,
and a few others,
yeah, a
right?
few others.
And so then you guys got together and you started creating working groups very responsibly, right?
That's right.
And the board had not been created yet. You were just a bunch of people
Working together.
who were working together to figure this out. Hadn't figured out that we needed the board yet. And one of the working group was a training working group that you guys created. The training working group. It was open and anyone could call in. It was such an open environment that these guys created immediately. I mean, that's just crazy how true and right it was from the very start. And so now my wife had actually known and had met Katie. And so she came to me and she said, there's this CMMC thing, you need to get involved. I said, okay, because I do what I'm told.
Smart man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy wife,
Yeah.
happy life.
Exactly. So so then I looked into it and I called in to the first phone, and at the time there was no Zoom, as this is before the
pandemic.
pandemic.
Yeah.
So you actually have to call in to the first meeting of the training working group. I just kind of called in, and the person running that working group was Ty Shiver. And I really want to make sure we give him a shout out because he really was an incredible leader.
Agreed.
And I just kind of listened to the ideas, and I thought to myself, this I need to be involved with this. First of all, and those ideas are missing some serious components that I need to bring in. So I sat there and just sent this really long email, just out of the blue. Took me all night to Ty, and he responded immediately, and that's how it
He
all
called me
started.
on that one.
Really?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What did he say?
He's just like, these people are really interested. Hey, it's beyond.
Yeah.
But you guys really blew. I mean, not to take away from it, but the fact, I don't think anybody can truly appreciate that we in the Department of Defense had a very limited amount of communication we were technically allowed to have.
We didn't talk to you.
So
Everyone thought that we did
I'm like,
every day, and we never talked to you.
Yeah.
and this is to this day, right? Like I would say go forth and prosper, but I would not. They set it up, the board. Everybody was like, how did you guys get to have a board? I'm like, they did that. That had nothing to be. But Jim, you tell how your favorite thing about CMMC
So for
early
me,
days.
it was actually the personality. So we've talked about that a lot. I've had people ask me, so I've heard all these rumors about how there's all this infighting. It's not that there was infighting. We're all type A personalities, and we are all very passionate about this.
Yep.
We're all very opinionated. Reagan and I love Reagan. We go back and forth all the time.
Yeah, we do.
But that's
Yeah.
the dynamic. That is our
Iron
relationship, and that
sharpens
is
iron, right?
exactly what
Yeah.
we needed.
Right.
Because to use Reagan's favorite line, right? Iron sharpens iron,
Yep.
and that's exactly what it is. We helped each other get
Yep.
better, and all
100%.
of us. We argued, yes, we did, but we all love each other. I mean, you see us, we're all friends because of it, and we've all lived through it because of it.
And that was, I will say, when the press started to go after the board members. I was probably the most mama bear moments that I've ever had, because I think I got on several stages and chewed out the audience for saying anything negative about the board members, because it's really great to criticize, except for the fact that none of you are volunteering 40, 50 hours a week and not getting paid. And no, that was a whole thing. No money transpired. There was
That was the catch, really. At the end of the day, it wasn't about us getting paid. It was the fact that the mission was to
Could you do it?
do this for the country,
Yeah.
and we're not giving you not
Any
$1.
resources, no
Like,
resources at
we
all.
had to use free
Everything.
trial tools, and we had to find a way to create a revenue model. Usually you create a revenue model, you advertise something,
Yeah.
maybe eventually some money comes. Was be creative and find a way to bring some money in to fund what is now the Cyber AB
Right.
and the administration of whatever decisions we made. Even just sending an email, we couldn't do on day one. We didn't have an email system.
That's right.
So we had to volunteer that.
We actually had to, like, finding money was an interesting challenge because we were a nonprofit.
Yep.
And you can't go get an SBA loan.
Right.
And if you start taking money from third parties, now you have pay to play, you have all these other potential issues. And
Right.
so it was a real challenge to come up with a way. As the treasurer, it was a real challenge for us to come up with a way to fund the AB.
Yeah.
To make it really short, we had no money, we were not paid, and we were not allowed to go out and get money
Right. Not,
or get
not
any
from the
support,
industry, certainly.
Right.
and the DoD wasn't allowed to talk to us. That's how we started.
well, Stacy could.
great way to start a business.
So we have to say, so for everybody watching, there are a few people that the AB members, 1,000%, so grateful. But there are some unsung heroes that never get the
100%.
pay. John Choi
Yep.
and Buddy Dees, Stacy Bosgenic,
Yep.
they, from behind the scenes, just the patience of Job. And they would come in and they would say, well, the AB has brought this challenge. I'm like, explain it to me in English. And it was, and understand the DoD side, my shop didn't really get any money for CMMC either. We pulled, I think I had $1 million in the first go around to write them, get the model together.
Right.
But without the collaboration of industry, academia, and the department, the government, nothing ever should be done by the government without the model that we created.
And I think I could add to that in this room at CIC this year, we have hundreds of people who were in the working groups calling in while their families were eating dinner or after dinner, and everybody was talking, contributing. We're just the face of many, many more people, all of all of whom felt the same passion at the same time. And the reason that the calls went late and we talked at midnight and all of that is because that it was much bigger than any of us and that challenge.
Yep.
And so many people, mostly small and medium-sized businesses, it was a little risky, I think, at the beginning for the large enterprises to get involved. They didn't know if it was really going to take all of that, at least not publicly. But the small businesses, the medium-sized businesses,
Right in.
from day one,
They bought into
it
the
was strong
adventure.
because of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's so true, Mark. I really appreciate that because while we were however many, 12 or however many we were to begin with, um, our true power came from the volunteers that joined into our working groups,
Mhm.
and they are the ones who brought it all together. They are the ones who took our lead and built this ecosystem. You know, I was leading 2 or 3 working groups at the same time.
Right.
Each of them with dozens of members. You
Yep.
had the standards working group,
Yep,
which was
that's right.
really strong
Right.
and worked, just 24/7. They were just
Yep.
working all the time. I mean, we were working on the training working groups, and many of them, you're right, are in this room, and that was the secret. It was not just we who came together, but truly hundreds
Yes.
of patriots
Holy
that
smokes,
simply
that's good.
decided, and their names have never really been released,
Yeah.
right?
No.
That
Yeah.
we couldn't release the names of. So hundreds of patriots who joined in the fight and helped us. That is how we were successful.
And
because
Reagan-
we didn't have a reason.
Sorry, you did the math at one point. How many hours were volunteered by all the working group members?
So I get in trouble for this, but we ended up doing the math because when we wanted to see, okay, well, how much is it, right? So I went back through. It took me 2.5 weeks to go back through my Outlook and to go through all of the appointments for 2020 alone. We added up 17,432 hours, right?
Wow.
Of of industry working group meetings and follow-on meetings. Because if you
And
remember
that's
correctly,
just your calendar.
that's just my industry working
And then
group.
we have
That's not all.
we have hundreds of people
hundreds
who are
of people.
volunteering almost at that
that's
level.
19 members. That's
Yeah.
19 members, 17,000 hours. So I remember this weird moment. Like the first couple of weeks, what we would do is like Ben would be in charge of training, and he would schedule because we had Zoom or we had Teams, and he'd schedule a meeting, and they're like, hey, listen, we're running over. Hey, Jim's meeting starts like 5 minutes ago, and Jim would have hung up from our meeting, and he was waiting in his meeting, and so all of us hung up and went to Jim's meeting, and they're like, okay, Mark's got his meeting with marketing. And then so we would hang up for his meeting, and then now Mark would have hung up from Jim's meeting, and now Mark would be in charge of this meeting. And then it went on for like 9 hours.
Yeah.
Well,
And
yeah,
then-
we
and then-
stopped working. We were not.
Totally.
We were
Yeah.
only full time with the AV.
Oh,
That's what we were.
absolutely.
Oh yeah.
That's
And you said, dude, I think we've been on calls with everyone else, but when are we actually going to do all this stuff? we gotta stop.
That's what we do at
and like,
night.
well, how are we gonna coordinate, right? So there's this epiphany that we had to have working groups. We had to have people to help us because there is no way that we went through like 9 hours of meetings with Jeff. Jeff is like, hey, okay, now we're going to talk about, and we all just came from Ben's meeting, right?
Yeah.
And it was this comical moment, like, now he's wearing the hat and he's in charge.
Yeah.
But there's no way to have done it without just people saying, hey,
Uh-huh.
here.
And shout out to Jeff, by the way,
Shout to Jeff.
who's now
Who's
leading
the
the AV.
sole survivor,
Yeah,
right?
Still
and
on the inside.
and
Still
he
on
was
the
working
inside.
his butt off too. He
Right.
worked hours and hours and hours.
And at the same time, not many people realize as they were developing all of that, we in the building were developing the actual model
That's right.
in parallel. So I think the big takeaway from this is that think about all of the bureaucratic nightmare mess that our government can be. In less than 1 year, do you realize what we did?
It's unbelievable.
Like in 1 year, we went I'm the crazy one who set the dates, right? I said, we're doing a release on this day, and this day, and we're gonna go on.
You're like, oh my God, Katie, there's no way we can make that. We're gonna
There's
do
always
it.
a way.
We're gonna do it.
We're gonna do it and just have faith that it will. And when there's a will, there will be a way.
Yep.
And I don't know about you all, but I get chills when I see, I get chills and then I get sad at the same time. Because I knew that the ecosystem lived and breathed. I knew it was out there. There was never doubt. People are like, you're never going to find C3PAOs. I'm like, they're out there, right? Everybody,
Absolutely.
these people are out there. They're dying to get involved. And up until that point, nobody had an opportunity to, and I said it earlier, let your cyber freak flag fly, right? There was always this group of people who were dying to help the government solve problems. Wouldn't it be amazing if the government took this initiative and just how we worked together? It wasn't me being, it was, this is a problem, how are we going to solve it? And for the folks watching this, most of the people in the Department of Defense have not worked in industry. So the controls and the requirements, this group did an amazing job of translating that so that small and medium-sized businesses could understand technically what we were talking about, not to say dumb it down, that's not the case, but to put it in English.
Right.
And you not only took all the requirements as we were going through, God, I mean, we were doing every quarter we did a release.
Right.
We adjudicated public comments. We went back. I mean, it was crazy. Gosh, now that I think about it, wow.
We didn't have time to think about it
Ooh.
while we were doing it.
No.
We would have stopped. We would have given up.
Right.
You just one foot in front of the other.
Totally.
Amazing. So here we are today. How do you feel about where we're at today? Have we made enough progress?
No, I'm disappointed. This is not who I'm disappointed in. I'm disappointed in leadership in the Department of Defense for not continuing at the pace that we were going on, because it's a national imperative. I'm disappointed that people, CISA, the White House, DHS, they are not acknowledging this. And this is exactly what was asked for in the National Cyber Solarium Report, that it is a bipartisan effort that came out that said we needed a national or a federal cyber certification program. Here it is. And it's a shame. I'm big on not duplicating effort, and don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to. We have a beautiful wheel. Anybody watching it, it's called CMMC. It's amazing. It's a great wheel. All the spokes are there. It may need some touch-up work as it starts rolling, but my gosh, what you guys created, and if, you know, I know administrations change. I think the 9-month pause on the program caused something that we tried really hard not to have happen, which is distrust in the government. When we say we're going to do something, we need to follow through. So I am grateful that they are following through, although disappointed, because I think that if we had stayed on our course, we would be much further along in the implementation. I mean, we would have been through.
And I agree. And I think one of the big problems that we see is that many people outside of our core group, including the folks at the DoD PMO, fail to realize that this is actually meant to be a living thing. It is
Yes.
supposed to change. The threat landscape is going to change.
Right.
The technology is going to change. Cybersecurity is always changing. We can't have a static thing. So waiting for something to become final, while I realize that that is part of the regulatory process, at some point, all this stuff is always going to change. So we've got to get off our collective rear ends and actually implement this thing and accept that it is going to keep changing.
I'm actually hopeful for the future, and that's just me. I'm very positive always, you know. And I think that once we do finally get that final rule, CMMC has the potential to truly become a universal standard.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
not just for the DoD,
Right.
but the rest of the federal government.
Well,
Not just
Not
the
even the
federal
federal
government, but local and state government.
Right.
Not just those guys, but actually many, if
Global
not
supply chain.
all,
Right.
private sector organizations.
Yeah.
You know, I think CMMC can truly, because it's a genius, and I'm going to give this lady credit for it. It's a genius standard. You know, it says, yes, you have to secure your organization, and here's a baseline. But hey, if you're too small, hey, here's a lower baseline. It's a maturity model.
Mhm.
You're too big,
Yes.
there's a higher baseline. And so it's not one size fits all. All the other standards around are one size fits all. It's only CMMC that actually is a maturity model and can fit the size of the organization. And because of that, it truly can be a universal model. And so I have hope that once we do get past these hurdles that Katie was so eloquently talking about, it's true. That this thing, well, that's you, right? You're the Iron Lady. It's I think that this thing can truly be. I'm a bit biased, of course. We're all a little biased here, but I think it could really take over.
So the whole premise to the model, and I don't think many people, we talk about the NIST, but we incorporated this because we knew we had international partners. We saw what was going on in the UK, in Australia, Singapore, and we incorporated, and this is the really fun part. So if you're not a cyber geek like we are, the ISO 27001, the Essential 8 out of the UK, it's all looking, the controls, the requirements have the same desired output, but they may say it in a different way. And this model brought all that together and cross-mapped. I mean, the cross-mapping that was done on this to say, this is this comes from ISO, this is a cyber essential, this is NIST, this is NIST CSF. You guys, that work, right? You think about it. Johns Hopkins, Carnegie Mellon, all of the folks that like tried to collaborate and work with us on this, and they were helpful, no doubt. But understand that has never been done before, to take all the disparate standards that are all saying and wanting the same desired outcome and actually taking the time to line item, line item, line item, so that it could become universal, right? And the whole time that I was in the department and talking, it was our international partners were craving it as much as our domestic partners were asking for it, because they as well know that they're at risk. And it has the potential to change, you know, I don't want to say change the world, but when ISO first started, right? Look at ISO now. And people asked me back then why you just didn't go with the ISO standard. I'm like, well, because the ISO standard wasn't sufficient. And the NIST 171 was what was required by law, because President Barack Obama said so. And we had to make it all happen. But you guys I hope in your lifetimes, you get a moment to sit back and say, wow, I did that.
I would agree. You know, one of the things I think that's a positive from where we're at now is the fact that the churn and the hardship, you know, I'm a former Ranger, and hardship builds cohesion, character, integrity, right? And it's a proof, it's an iron, it's a fiery forge, right? And if you want to make steel harder, you put it in the fiery forge and you bring it out and you bring it to the hammer and the anvil. And I think that this ecosystem has built cohesion and friendship and shared hardship, that you've burned out all the people who just want to make a quick buck, right? There are other things that are easier to do. And what you have left is that really dedicated core. The people who, I mean, you're coming back to us, right? On the industry. During your talk today, I just thought, how amazing is it to go from, you know, you could have gone to, you know, a board seat and collected the cash and the checks and all of that, which is normally what higher folks do. But now you came back to us, even through the difficulty, the fiery forge, and said, I've got something more to contribute. That is the difference. That's what makes this special. And there's nothing else like it. I mean, people who are dedicated to the mission come back and say, "This is hard. We're gonna fight our way through it. We're gonna improvise, adapt, overcome, and we're gonna make this happen." And to me, when you're here at the CIC conference, I mean, there are friendships and bonds. I saw somebody today that I've been working with for 3 years, and I just realized we're standing next to each other. I'm like,
Wow.
this is the first time we've actually met in person. Dude, I spent hundreds of hours with you. And it's like we're brothers. But
That's
this is
repeated over and
actually,
over here.
that's right.
Yeah.
This is actually the first time we've
Wow.
physically met, which is ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And when we saw each other at CMMC Day last year, there's a bond that is unbreakable, right? And there's nothing else like that. And that is special. And that will allow us to make it happen, make the mission happen.
Well, in answer to your question, I'm going to speak as just a citizen, not as a company, somebody operating company or a board member. I'm really disappointed by our government. At the end of the day, I don't want to have another Colonial Pipeline, solar winds, I don't want to have the FAA grounding planes because of an archaic system or an ill-defended system. It's enough. We've had enough of the alarms going off to know that we can do something about it. And right now, I think our government is letting perfect get in the way of done.
Amen.
And I'm tired of it because I think as a citizen, I'm entitled to more and entitled to better. We all pay our taxes. We have a plan. We, the citizens, have gotten together. We've built an imperfect CMMC, right? But we didn't just build a model, we built an ecosystem. This room is filled with people who all flew here at their own expense so they could talk and work more on it. These people are warriors, in my opinion. And I think, as I heard earlier, the war of the future is not going to be kinetic.
Nope.
It's going to be in cyber. It's going to be about moving assets around, controlling physical things electronically. And we know all of these things, and we have a solution, albeit imperfect, built to be dynamic, built to grow, and we're sitting on it, and we're waiting 9 more months, okay? And these people are dedicated, and more will come, but there's nothing that's really gonna change in 9 months. It's time now, and how many more breaches, how many more of our adversaries will steal data that they can use against our people in uniform who are putting their lives at risk? And I'm just done with that. So take our imperfect, make it better, give us the reign to do it. I understand actually why we didn't get money at the beginning. Nobody had ever done it before. Go figure something out. They didn't trust us, but we figured it out, and it's much bigger than DoD. Children at the Department of Education need to be protected, Homeland Security, and just regular companies. We have a model where you can say, maybe I don't have perfect cybersecurity because there isn't perfect cybersecurity, but I've hit a baseline, and either you're in or you're out.
Right.
For now, the government needs to tell the country we're in or we're out, and that's where I stand.
So I'm going to quote General Bassett, DCMA.
Oh, yeah.
What are you waiting for? I mean, when he said that like a month ago at a CM, it's like, what are you waiting for? What cataclysmic event does it need for you to realize that this is happening to your country, to your companies, and is jeopardizing our country's capability of being the greatest nation on the planet in the future? What are you waiting for? And if one more person tells me it costs too much, we're losing more money, $139 million a day in the DoD alone. A day.
That's crazy.
And how can you sit there and say, Ellen Lord said it before she left, I hope that they don't let perfect be the enemy of this effort. Because, as you said, this is electronic warfare. The way the adversary acts today, they're not going to act tomorrow, and they're not going to act 5 years from now. I mean, who would have thought 15 years ago that passwords would become antiquated, right? The world is changing, and our adversaries are moving at the speed of change, and we are still working off of the McNamara acquisition style from 1950, 1960. We are stuck on slow, amazingly slow regulatory changes. I don't understand why we need as much time to have public comment about everything that we're doing. The NIST, this whole rule change taking time and going along, I think it's ridiculous. It's people not willing to say, you know what, I can live with a little risk because I want to sleep tonight.
And the problem is that from most companies' perspective, I think they think this is hard. And it is, right? What you're doing is actually maturing. You're spending the time and investing the time in making your company better. And if you go through this right, you will actually be more efficient. You will be a better company for it. But it's hard to go through. You're going to have to do some actual soul searching, which sounds strange in cybersecurity. But you actually have to look at policies, procedures, think about all these things. That's hard to do. But when you get through it, we will be better as a nation. And if we continue to not do it, we're not going to exist as a nation because we're going to continue to leave vulnerabilities sitting out there. We're going to leave them unaddressed, and it's going to cause problems for us across the board. We saw it with a pandemic where just a small percentage of our population got sick, and that was enough to totally screw up our economy. Imagine if instead of that being people, they were the equipment that those people operated. It's the same thing. And it just takes a handful of cogs to go in those, and everything gets ruined.
And in terms of expense, I mean, I equate this to building codes, right? So if you think about, I mean, I don't have the dates, but in the last century, building codes were kind of non-existent, right? People would build whatever. And then there was the San Francisco earthquake, and then people died. Thousands, millions of people died. And then they started saying, okay, maybe we need to build our buildings to a specific code. And perhaps builders were upset because now it's more expensive for them to build those buildings. So, but now we were used to it. It's the world we're in now. And what we're doing is we built the building codes for enterprises, and we need enterprises to adopt them. And in the future, and again, that's the hopeful thing,
Yeah.
it's just going to be a natural part of how we build our businesses within the purview of these new codes that are going to keep us more secure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So, what advice would you give folks out there? What is your best advice to part with today? Who
I'll
would
give
like
you
to
4
start?
words. Stop talking, start doing. That's the theme of the conference, but it's
Yes.
also literally like it is the best advice. Get off your rear end, start doing this stuff, because there's no better time than today. Tomorrow it is going to get harder.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I would say that the time that it's taken us to walk through the fire in the forge, right? And really get in the trenches and understand the problem set and understand how to help a small, mid-sized business. We have broken the 4-minute mile. Aeroglen, small, mid-sized company, 100 people, hardworking IT team, Zbigniew, who's going to speak tomorrow, right? And he's going to tell people, look, stop, not whining is not the right word. Stop worrying that the fact that you can do this. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. Is it hard? Yes, it is hard. Is it worthwhile? Yes, it is. Because we are transforming. It is a transformative venture to change companies from the way that we used to do it to the way that we have to do it. But the reality is that this can be done. And Zbigniew and his IT team, along with his production management and his compliance folks there, and the engineering teams, they are just a tiered contractor in the Bell ecosystem, and they did it in Dallas Fort Worth. And if they can do it, you can do it. And that's the reality. And we have to say, yes, it's hard. Big hugs. It's time. It's time to stop talking about it. It's time to do it. There are people who can do it. Let's look to them for direction and distance, and let's start leading and getting it done. And when we start executing, we will do what we thought was impossible, and we will make this happen. And people got to start believing that we can do this and we can do it together.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave the last words, of course, to Mark and then Katie, so I'll go next. I think I'm the chair of training, so that's what I'm going to talk about. You know, the fact is, people are like, "Oh, I don't know what I'm doing." Well, that's no excuse. That really is no longer an excuse because there's so many capabilities. I mean, so many opportunities for getting trained.
Yep.
And
And
it's
so
not
many
just my
resources.
company. There's just resources abound
Yes.
that can teach you how to do this. And the tools, like the tools you guys have, are there to help you along the way. Maybe 2 years ago, when there was nothing there, you would have an excuse. Right now, there's really no such excuse.
Yeah.
Before I kind of answer the question, I'm really struck as I'm listening to everyone and thinking back to the memories of those late night conversations till 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning sometimes.
Yeah.
This was the secret.
They
That
started
was
happy
Gina,
hour
by the
already.
way.
They started
That was
happy hour.
Cybersecurity can be fun,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
Um,
Right.
The secret is this is what we talked about till 2 in the morning. Some of our conversations took longer because it was always so much bigger than any of us or any of our companies. And you can't just ignore that. We're doing it for a reason. And this, what you just saw, is how we talk to each other for more than a year because it needed to be said. And at the end of the day, it was individuals, one at a time, one conversation building on another, sometimes giving up when you and I had some late nights on some pretty passionate things. And sometimes you had to say, you know what? You represented a whole working group and my idea just isn't as good. So it does happen one person at a time. There is no somebody else that's going to do it for you. If you have the ability to reach out to talk about how important this is, then our future is not in these people's hands, it's in your hands. And so to me, when I think about going forward and where we are, I'm very optimistic because it isn't acceptable where we are, but all of us have the ability to put one foot in front of the other and just start and start doing it.
Yep.
Thank you.
So I'm going to sum this up. It's not the government's job to save you. The government didn't put you in business. You started a business because you wanted to do work with the government. If you're waiting, I hate to say it, we'll miss you. But while you're waiting and putting something off that is going to secure your business, make you more reliable, resilient, more profitable, and you're waiting for the government to say, do it, although they already have, remember that, they have, since 2015. It was nice knowing you. And I hope wherever you land that God treats you well, but this nation needs you to get up, get on it, and get it done now. Your business, the adversary, competitors, and we talked about it earlier, the next war that we're in it. It's called cyber war. Cyber attacks don't happen like you would. It's not like one morning you're going to wake up and everything's going to be turned off. The adversary's job is to destroy from within. And our supply chains, you guys in industry, you are what is holding the line together. This is the first line defense for you. So please stop waiting. Go get your CMMC certification, because the rule is going to happen whether it happens in 23 or 24. And in 24, you don't get work because you can't get on a schedule to get a CMMC certification. That's on you. And if you're looking at a BD pipeline and you're looking 18 months out, you're already too late, because the rule will go into effect in 2024 and we're already there. So get on it. Don't wait for the government to save you. That's not their job. You're in business. You took a responsibility. You signed a contract. You said you could and you would. So just do.
Thank you, Katie.
Sorry.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate your guys' time, Mark
Of course.
and Reagan and Jim. I called you Mark. Sorry, Jim. So really appreciate your guys' time today. The cyber war is real, and it's here, and it's here to stay. And we have to really get engaged. We have to be in the trenches together and come together. One team, one fight, as Katie said. And we really need to get engaged and get started on this in order to protect our country, to save our livelihood, to save our country. Thank you.
And
Thank you very
apparently
much.
save them
Thank
too.
Yes, exactly. We need to save them too.